We began this journey in the depths of winter nearly 2 years ago on the steps of the old state capitol in Springfield, Illinois, the place where Abraham Lincoln served for so many years. You know, back then we didn't have much money and we didn't have many endorsements. We weren't given much of a chance by the polls or the pundits, and we knew how steep our climb would be. But I also knew this. I knew that the size of our challenges had outgrown the smallness of our politics. I believed that Democrats and Republicans and Americans of every political stripe were hungry for new ideas and new leadership and a new kind of politics, one that favors common sense over ideology. One that focuses on those values and ideals that we hold in common as Americans. Most of all, I believed in you. I believed in your ability to make change happen. I knew that the American people were a decent, generous people who were willing to work hard and sacrifice for future generations. And I was absolutely convinced that when we come together, our voices are more powerful than the most entrenched lobbyists or the most vicious political attacks or the full force of a status quo in Washington that wants to keep things just the way they are. And Ken, 21 months later, my faith in the American people has been vindicated. That's how we've come so far, how we've come so close, because of you. That's how we'll change this country, with your help. That's why we cannot afford to slow down or sit back. We cannot let up for 1 day or 1 minute or 1 second in this last week. Not now, not when there's so much at stake. 1 week. Years from now, you'll look back and you'll say that this was the moment. This was the place where America remembered what it means to hope. For many months we've been teased, even derided, for talking about hope. But we always knew that hope is not blind optimism. It's not ignoring the enormity of the task ahead or the roadblocks that stand in our path. It's not sitting on the sidelines or shirking. Hope is that thing inside us that insists, despite all the evidence to the contrary, that something better awaits us if we have the courage to reach for it and to work for it and to fight for it. In the eyes of the young woman in Cedar Rapids who works the night shift after a full day of college and still can't afford health care for a sister who's ill. A young woman who still believes that this country will give her the chance to live out her dreams. Hope is what I heard in the voice of the New Hampshire woman who told me that she hasn't been able to breathe since her nephew left for a run. Who still goes to bed each night praying for a safe return. Hope is what led a band of colonists to rise up against an empire. What led the greatest of generations to free a continent and heal a nation. What led young women and young men to sit at lunch counters and brave fire hoses and march through Selma and Montgomery for freedom's cause. Is what led me here today. With a father from Kenya, a mother from Kansas, and a story that can only happen in the United States of America. Hope is the bedrock of this nation. The belief that our destiny will not be written for us, but by us, by all those men and women who are not content to settle for the world as it is, who have the courage to remake the world as it should be. That is what we started here in Iowa, and that is the message we can now carry to New Hampshire and beyond. The same message we had when we were up and when we were down. The one that can change this country brick by brick, block by block, callous hand by callous hand, that together, ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Because we are not a collection of red states and blue states. We are the United States of America. And in this moment, in this election, we are ready to believe again. Thank you, Iowa. What began 21 months ago in the depths of winter cannot end on this autumn night. This victory alone is not the change we seek. It is only the chance for us to make that change. And that cannot happen if we go back to the way things were. It can't happen without you, without a new spirit of service, a new spirit of sacrifice. So let us summon a new spirit of patriotism, of responsibility, where each of us resolves to pitch in and work harder and look after not only ourselves but each other. Let us remember that if this financial crisis taught us anything, it's that we cannot have a thriving Wall Street while Main Street suffers. In this country, we rise or fall as one nation, as one people. Let's resist the temptation to fall back on the same partisanship and pettiness and immaturity that has poisoned our politics for so long. Let's remember that it was a man from this state who first carried the banner of the Republican Party to the White House, a party founded on the values of self-reliance and individual liberty and national unity. Those are values that we all share. And while the Democratic Party has won a great victory tonight, we do so with a measure of humility and determination to heal the divides that have held back our progress. As Lincoln said to a nation far more divided than ours, we are not enemies, but friends. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. To those Americans whose support I have yet to earn, I may not have won your vote tonight, but I hear your voices. I need your help, and I will be your president too. And all those watching tonight from beyond our shores, from parliaments and palaces, those who are huddled around radios in the forgotten corners of the world, our stories are singular, but our destiny is shared. The new dawn of American leadership is at hand. To those who would tear the world down, we will defeat you. To those who seek peace and security, we support you. And to all those who have wondered if America's beacon still burns as bright, tonight we prove once more that the true strength of our nation comes not from the might of our arms or the scale of our wealth, but from the enduring power of our ideals, democracy, liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope. As I've said from the day we began this journey all those months ago, the change we need isn't just about new programs and policies. It's about a new attitude. It's about new politics. A politics that calls on our better angels instead of encouraging our worst instincts. One that reminds us of the obligations we have to ourselves and one another. Part of the reason this economic crisis occurred is because we've been living through an era of profound irresponsibility. On Wall Street, easy money and an ethic of what's good for me is good enough blinded greedy executives to the dangers in decisions that they were making. On Main Street, lenders tricked people into buying homes they couldn't afford. Some folks knew they couldn't afford those houses and bought them anyway. In Washington, politicians spent money they didn't have and allowed lobbyists to set the agenda. They scored political points instead of solving our problems. And even after the greatest attack on American soil since Pearl Harbor, all we were asked to do by our president was to go out and shop. That's why what we've lost in these last 8 years can't be measured just by lost wages or bigger trade deficits. What's also been lost is the idea that in this American story, each of us has a role to play. Each of us have responsibilities to work hard, to look after ourselves and our families, and each of us has a responsibility to look out for each other, our fellow citizens. That's what's been lost these last 8 years. Our common sense of purpose, our sense of higher purpose. That's what we need to restore right now. That's one of the reasons I'm running for President of the United States of America. Unity is the great need of the hour. That's what Dr. King said. And it is the great need of this hour as well. Not because it sounds pleasant, not because it makes us feel good, but because it's the only way we can overcome the essential deficit that exists in this country. I'm not talking about the budget deficit. I'm not talking about the trade deficit. I'm talking about the moral deficit in this country. I'm talking about an empathy deficit. The inability to recognize ourselves in one another. To understand that we are our brother's keeper and our sister's keeper. That in the words of Dr. King, we are all tied together in a single garment of destiny. We have an empathy deficit when we're still sending our children down corridors of shame, schools in the forgotten corners of America, where the color of your skin still affects the content of your education. We have a deficit when CEOs are making more in 10 minutes than ordinary workers are making an entire year. When families lose their homes so unscrupulous lenders can make a profit. When mothers can't afford a doctor, their children are stricken with illness. We have a deficit in this country when we have Scooter Libby, justice for some, and Gina, justice for others. And our children see hanging nooses from a schoolyard tree today, in the present, in the 21st century. We have a deficit when homeless veterans sleep on the streets of our cities, when innocents are slaughtered in the deserts of Darfur, when young Americans serve tour after tour after tour after tour of duty in a war that should have never been authorized and should have never been waged. We have an empathy deficit in this country that has to be closed. If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer. Told by lines that stretched around schools and churches in numbers this nation has never seen, by people who waited 3 hours, 4 hours, many for the first time in their lives, because they believed that this time must be different, that their voices could be that different. It's the answer spoken by young and old, rich and poor, Democrat and Republican, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, gay, straight, disabled and not disabled, Americans who sent a message to the world that we have never been just a collection of individuals or a collection of red states and blue states. We are and always will be the United States of America. It's the answer that led those who've been told for so long by so many to be cynical and fearful and doubtful about what we can achieve, to put their hands on the arc of history and bend it once more toward the hope of a better day. It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America. A little bit earlier this evening, I received an extraordinarily gracious call from Senator McCain. Senator McCain fought long and hard in this campaign, and he's fought even longer and harder for the country that he loves. He has endured sacrifices for America that most of us cannot begin to imagine. We are better off for the service rendered by this brave and selfless leader. I congratulate him. I congratulate Governor Palin for all that they've achieved, and I look forward to working with them to renew this nation's promise in the months ahead.
Genius. Fantasy.
I will never forget who this victory truly belongs to. It belongs to you. It belongs to you. I was never the likeliest candidate for this office. We didn't start with much money or many endorsements. Our campaign was not hatched in the halls of Washington. It began in the backyards of Des Moines, in the living rooms of Concord, in the front porches of Charleston. It was built by working men and women who dug into what little savings they had to give $5, $10, $20 to the cause. It grew strength from the young people who rejected the myth of their generation's apathy, who left their homes and their families for jobs that offered little pay and less sleep. It drew strength from the not-so-young people who braved the bitter cold and scorching heat to knock on doors of perfect strangers, and from the millions of Americans who volunteered and organized and proved that more than 2 centuries later, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people has not perished from the earth. This is your victory. can change. Our union can be perfected. What we've already achieved gives us hope for what we can and must achieve tomorrow. This election had many firsts, and many stories that will be told for generations, but one that's on my mind tonight is about a woman who cast her ballot in Atlanta. She's a lot like the millions of others who stood in line to make their voice heard in this election, except for one thing. Ann Nixon Cooper is 106 years old. She was born just a generation past slavery, a time when there were no cars on the road or planes in the sky, when someone like her couldn't vote for two reasons: because she was a woman and because of the color of her skin. And tonight, I think about all that she's seen throughout her century in America: the heartache and the hope, the struggle and the progress, the times we were told that we can't, and the people who pressed on with that American creed: yes, we can. At a time when women's voices were silenced and their hopes dismissed, she lived to see them stand up and speak out and reach for the ballot. Yes, we can. When there was despair in the Dust Bowl and depression across the land, she saw a nation conquer fear itself with a new deal, new jobs, a new sense of common purpose. Yes, we can. When the bombs fell on our harbor and tyranny threatened the world, she was there to witness a generation rise to greatness and a democracy was saved. Yes, we can. She was there for the buses in Montgomery, the hoses in Birmingham, a bridge in Selma, and a preacher from Atlanta who told the people that we shall overcome. Yes, we can. A man touched down on the moon. A wall came down in Berlin. A world was connected by our own science and imagination. And this year, in this election, she touched her finger to a screen and cast her vote. Because after 106 years in America, through the best of times and the darkest of hours, she knows how America can change. Yes, we can. America, we have come so far. We have seen so much. But there's so much more to do. So tonight, let us ask ourselves, if our children should live to see the next century, if my daughters should be so lucky to live as long as Ann Nixon Cooper, what change will they see? What progress will we have made? This is our chance to answer that call. This is our moment. This is our time to put our people back to work and open doors of opportunity for our kids, to restore prosperity and promote the cause of peace, to reclaim the American dream and reaffirm that fundamental truth that out of many we are one, that while we breathe, we hope, and where we are met with cynicism and doubt and those who tell us that we can't, we will respond with that timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can. Thank you. God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America. Part of what we take pride in as Americans is that almost uniquely to any country around the world, we were started on the basis of an idea. A set of ideas about liberty, and justice, and equality, that all men were created equal, that we are a nation not of men but of laws, a nation in which if you're willing to try, then you can make it. That it doesn't matter where you were born or what color your skin is or what religion you practice. That you're able to say what you please and write what you please and worship as you please. Those principles have led all the world to look to us as a beacon, as a shining example of what can happen when people from all walks of life come together around a set of common principles and common values. And that is our most powerful export. That's the message we need to be delivering to the world. That America's ready to lead again. And yes, we will lead militarily and we will hunt down terrorists, but we will also lead in caring for the environment and making sure that we're stopping global warming. We're also going to lead in creating the new technologies that ensure energy independence. We're also going to lead in helping other countries create the kinds of education systems that give them opportunity. We're also going to lead in upholding human rights and civil rights. And that's why it's right that we restore habeas corpus and we close Guantanamo. We send a message to the world that we stand for something here, even when we're threatened, even when it's hard. I stand before you as the son of ordinary folks. My grandparents grew up in a small town in Kansas. My mother was a single mom. My father, who was from Kenya, left when we were very young, so I didn't know him. I was raised by a single mom. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of power. But there are a couple things they passed on to me. They passed on love. They passed on an education. They passed on a sense of hope. They passed on a love of country. And I know that there is no other country on earth where I could be standing before you as somebody who could potentially be the next president of the United States of America. And my journey is not unique. It's the story that each and every one of you and your families carry with you, that because of our work and our toil and our sacrifice, somehow we are able to create a country that's more prosperous and more united for the next generation. That despite all the things that might divide us, that we come together as one. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, young, old, rich, poor, urban, rural, all of us coming together beneath this flag, insisting that we are going to create a better America, insisting that we are going to live out the promise of those who founded this country so long ago. Montanans, I'm proud to be with you on the 4th of July. I am proud to be the Democratic nominee for the presidency of the United States. I am proud God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
I have a dream.
It was a creed written into the founding documents that declared the destiny of a nation. Yes, we can. It was whispered by slaves and abolitionists as they blazed the trail toward freedom. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
It was sung
by immigrants as they struck out from distant shores, pioneers who pushed westward against the unforgiving wilderness. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
It was the call of workers who organized, women who reached for the ballots, a president who chose the moon as our new frontier,
And a king who took us to the mountaintop and pointed the way to the promised land.
Yes, we can to justice and equality.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Yes, we
Oh,
can.
yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we
Yes, we can. Yes, we can to opportunity and prosperity. Yes, we can to opportunity and prosperity. Yes, we can heal this nation.
this nation.
Yes, we can
repair this world.
Repair this world.
Yes, we can.
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 Can. I know you're calling.
Yes, we can.
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 Yes,
Yes, we can.
Yes, we
can.
We know the battle ahead will be long. But always remember that no matter what obstacles stand in our way, nothing can stand in the way of the power of millions of voices calling for change.
We want change. We want change. We want change.
We have been told we cannot do this by a chorus of cynics. It
They
will only grow louder.
and
More
more.
disciplined. We've been asked to pause for a reality check. We've been warned against offering the people of this nation false hope.
But in the
But in the
unlikely
unlikely
story that is America,
there's never been anything false about hope.
Want change is all.
I want change. I want change.
The hopes of the little girl who goes to the public school in Dillon are the same as the dreams of a boy who learns on the streets of LA.
We will remember that there's something happening in America.
That we are not as divided as our politics suggest. That
We are one people.
We are one nation. And together we will begin the next great chapter in the American story with three words that will ring from coast to coast, from sea to shining